off. Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Good morning, everybody. It is November 20th, 2025. It's about 11:05 in the morning. I happen to be in Portland, Maine right now, and y'all have figured out the cadence that if I'm in a particular city, I'm probably here for a site visit. So stay tuned for updated news from Portland, Maine, about HCM care in Maine. So I am here in Maine. Alex Feria, where are you?
I am at work. So a couple weeks a year when I'm in the hospital seeing patients, I am at one of the University of Pennsylvania's hospitals. It's actually in West Philadelphia. So it's one of our kind of more urban outreach centers. And this hospital is called Cedar Hospital, but it used to be called Mercy, and originally it was called Douglas Mercy Hospital. And the original group that became this hospital was in the late 1800s is when it was started, and it was created to take care of Philadelphia's African-American patients. And so it had like the first African-American nursing school in Philly, and some of the first Black doctors were here, so it's got a lot of history. So it's a cool spot.
That's a really cool. So I'm going to apologize to everybody for some of our audio today. When we're on the road, we don't have as much control over the audio, so it gets a little funny sometimes. And I'm going to try to talk quietly and slowly so we don't get feedback. Sorry, I'm going to cough. Fun about live podcasting. Okay, Alex, we have been in a number of places over the past couple of weeks together. So we had the HCM Society scientific session, which led into the American Heart Association scientific session. And I feel like there was no way you could actually go to all of the sessions that you wanted to go to because there were so many that were at the same time. You only have 2.5 days to do it all. So what were some of the highlights of your scientific sessions, both HCM Society and AHA this year?
Yeah, I thought, so for those of you guys that don't know what HCMS is, it's kind of a meeting of a lot of the experts, both clinical and research, and in some instances, experts that do both, get together and talk about the latest innovations in science within the HCM space. And so, I thought there's some really cool discussions, and this is actually more in the partially HCMS, partially AHA, about what is being done to create a cure for HCM, whether it's funding that's going through Cricket Sidemen, if you walk in, so like both US and European teamwork to try and find a way via genetics to cure the disease. So that just in case you don't know, there is a huge amount of money that has been put into trying to, using HCM as kind of the benchmark disease to look for ways to genetically improve outcomes. So, it's really cool that we have all these treatments like mavacamten and some of the other, like aficamten is going to be coming up soon, and other investigational therapies that are being studied. But those all kind of treat the issue that you have that stemmed from, in half of our patients, a genetic problem that caused HCM. So for the half of HCM patients that actually have a genetic form of the disease or that we know of, there's a lot of work being done for that. And then, at the actual AHA meeting, they released some of the data for the first gene therapy for myosin binding protein C3 or MYBPC3. And I actually got to go, and it sounds like you did too, Lisa, got to go meet a young lady who was the first person to be dosed with the vector or with the gene therapy. Sounds like she's doing well. So it's really neat to see bench research make it to the bedside, and it's just more signs that things are just moving so rapidly. The treatment of this disease and how we talk about it today is so different than it was 10 years ago, and will be so different in 10 years than what we're talking about today. So a lot of exciting stuff and a lot of HCM.
HCM was everywhere this session. it was amazing to see, like, the location of our booth on the floor of the exhibit hall. We were on a corner going down one aisle. In front of us to the side was cytokinetics, followed by Pfizer with tafamidis for amyloid, another thick heart, followed by BMS. So we had this thick heart row that led you right to the HCMA and our anatomic heart collection.
Yeah, I went and checked it out.
It just moved so smoothly through, and like it made sense on the floor. Unfortunately, next year we don't have a great space. I'm going to talk to them about that. But being on the floor and seeing the excitement around HCM this year was even better than last year, and that was pretty amazing. So the work that is going on right now is really, I'm trying to find the right word. It's a lot of hard work, and it took a lot of time to build the ecosystem to be able to do what we're doing right now. But we are showing that a disease that is uncommonly common is able to be treated at the highest level with the best science. And we can really go out there and tell people now, if you have HCM, you don't have to be sick with heart disease. You can be well with heart disease, and we can keep you well with heart disease with a lot of these new mechanisms. And if we aren't quite hitting the mark yet, let us know where we're not. And there's new development coming up in so many new places that if your care is not where you want it to be, if you're still struggling with some type of symptom, make sure you're articulating that to your care provider so that they can see it. And in a couple of weeks, you're going to get a new survey from the HCMA measuring burden of disease. And I need you all to be really honest with us in that and tell us everything that you're feeling and where you're frustrated and where you're not getting the care. Because we're going to go to the FDA in April and we're going to talk to them about gene therapies and RNA silencing. And when we do that, we're going to be able to create another voice of the patient report. And we're going to be able to show very clearly where the gaps are, where you're still not having your needs met. So we're going to need that interaction, and it's the time to do it. So please be sure to communicate clearly what's working, what isn't, and what you want to see in the future, because it's going to be a really ripe time for development and a really amazing time for advancements in healthcare. And yes, I got to not only meet Julia, but turns out I actually knew who she was and didn't know who she was because she did the right thing and not talk about her participation in a clinical trial publicly. So when I went up to see her after she spoke publicly, she was super sweet. Juliet, love you. She's just such a lovely lady. And we did podcast with her live from New Orleans, but the sound was really bad because we had high ceilings and we were sitting next to each other and there was some audio issues. So she's going to come back soon and you'll hear it much more clearly when she comes back. But she really thought about her decision to participate in this very specific clinical trial. And she did so thoughtfully, respectfully, and with good reason she joined this trial. And I'm super impressed with her bravery and her willingness to put herself out there, and maybe a little extra proud of her because she mentioned how important it was for her to be a young woman participating in a clinical trial. So just love this kid. Just love this kid.
And if I'm correct, I think it was mostly women. Of the 6, I think, patients that he presented, I think 4 were women.
Yep.
4 or 5. I think it also just speaks to bravery that may have a gender role. Like a lot of brave women out there.
There are a lot of brave women out here, and I'm super impressed with them. And I think they are leading the way in a really important way in this particular trial. And I will tell you that generally speaking, when you look at HCM trials, they are way more balanced male to female than a lot of other clinical trials in cardiology. So I'm really proud of our community for stepping up and the women in our community stepping up to do clinical trials. So shout out to HCM women. You rock. So anyway, the topic of the month is one we face every year. Some of us have challenges with it. Some of us have fun with it, but it's the holiday season. We're about to like next week, we're going into the big one, people. We're going to Thanksgiving. We're going to that time where eating a big meal is just what we do. And then we know that there are consequences when you have HCM and eating a big meal and adding a little bit of alcohol. And then if you're a crazy family like mine, we do a hike in the morning. So there's some physical activity and then a lot of food. You got to learn balance. And Alex, I want to talk to you today a little bit about how do patients best balance, but okay, maybe they're having too much fun and they lose track of the balance. What happens if they tip over into becoming highly symptomatic because of what they ingested or did or didn't do that day? So I'm going to go on mute so that we don't have a lot of feedback, and I'm going to let you take the mic and talk about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. The holidays are an interesting time for patients because there's a subset of patients that, and I would say a lot of our patients feel better going into the winter because it's not as hot. They're not outside as much, they're not sweating as much. So a lot of people enjoy the cooler weather than the summer weather. But then the holiday meals come, and that's when, like, I usually will ask my patients, like, do you find that after Thanksgiving dinner you were just wiped out and have a really hard time helping clean up? And you always thought it was the tryptophan. You know, everyone said, oh, it's a tryptophan in the turkey. Well, I would say that it manifests, that fatigue and worsening shortness of breath and things like that probably manifests itself for different reasons depending on what your heart looks like. If you have obstructive HCM, which means you have obstruction of blood flow as it comes out of the heart, and you eat a really, really, really heavy meal, especially if you're not used to eating heavy meals, or you avoid them because you feel bad most of the times when you do, but then you feel this pressure on Thanksgiving because you've been cooking all day and you want to have fun, you eat a bunch, a lot of blood flow is going to your gut to digest that food, and it's not returning to fill up your heart. And so anything that underfills your heart, if you already have a very narrow space for blood to get out of the heart, and then you underfill that space, it's going to get even narrower. And so you have worse obstruction, you can feel a lot worse. And, you know, what folks will describe, what I used to describe is, you know, ate a big meal, everything that I might have some symptoms with at baseline is amplified. Walking, inclines, stairs, more palpitations can feel worse. And so there's a subset of patients that will feel that. Then there's a subset of patients that have more issues with building up fluid. And, you know, some of our patients are on diuretics or pills to make you pee more. And then, you know, I've spent many Thanksgiving working in the hospital or Christmas working in the hospital. And then the day after is when folks roll in because they gain 3 or 4 pounds of fluid. And in that instance, that group of folks did because of the salt intake, made them retain fluid, and they have a stiff heart with HCM that maybe isn't obstructive. And so they run into issues like that. And so you kind of have to, depending on what your heart looks like, you have to approach the holidays kind of tailored to yourself. And, you know, I encourage you to talk to your cardiologist about your concerns going into it. If you find you feel like crap every year, Christmas and Thanksgiving, it's good to have a plan. You know, for the obstructive patients and for the non-obstructive patients that build up a lot of fluid, I always think that trying to eat a smaller portion is better, even if you're grazing during the day. Like, you know, you start cooking the turkey at like 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning, and you're making stuffing and all that stuff. Yeah, you find yourself having eaten a lot by the time dinner comes. So trying to like minimize the sheer volume of food is probably going to help you. With alcohol, I would say, you know, alcohol can cause multiple issues. First of all, it's a diuretic. It can make you pee, so it can dehydrate you. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier, anything that underfills your heart can make you feel worse. Also, alcohol dilates your blood vessels. So a lot of folks will get flushed when they have a drink or things like that. And that can actually make your obstruction worse for other reasons. So then it's like a double whammy. So what I tell my patients with alcohol, you know, I'm realistic. I'm not going to say never drink because, you know, there they're going to have a drink. But I do think that, alternating, if you're going to have a glass of wine with a big glass of water can be helpful. Staying very hydrated with it can be super helpful.
My rule had always been a bottle of water and a drink, and then another bottle of water, and then a little while later you could have another drink, but not just going glass after glass after glass. You need the water in between.
Yeah, you got to fight dehydration for those that are obstructive, and too much fluid for those that have stiff hearts and have issues with retaining fluid.
Absolutely. So what about the added part of the holidays? And for some of us, that might be a little family stress, especially in 2025 when there's a lot of polarizing conversations that might be happening in front of the football game or on the couch or at the table. Any hints to keep the calm and keep yourself calm during stressful interactions?
Yeah, I think holidays are going to be hard for multiple reasons, whether it's you're seeing people you don't see a lot that you maybe don't agree with about stuff, or that don't know about your condition and don't understand your condition and maybe aren't as thoughtful. They're also probably going to be hard if you've lost somebody, because it might be the first holiday that you're without that loved one that had HCM, or even if it's not the first one, every single holiday without that person is tough. I try with my family and try and be grateful, because HCM is hard, and we're all trying to get through it, and we're all trying to live a normal life, and have some grace for the people that don't understand you, because a lot of people will not understand your condition, and just probably don't talk about politics. I would just avoid it. Stress is going to make people feel worse. Stress is going to make patients with HCM have more palpitations. I routinely say, Anjali, my partner, said she's going to stop sending monitors over Christmas. And I used to laugh at her because I was like, what are you talking about? And I think I made too, because I swear the number of abnormal heart rhythms that pop up on people's monitors around Christmas time that you don't see any other time of the year there's got to be something to it. But yeah, there's definitely stress there, and I would do whatever you can to minimize that stress.
So you just said something very interesting there. You're seeing it clinically, that there's a physical response to our experiencing these events that should be joyful. They should be joyful, but on our bodies and on our minds, it can be very hard. So coming from a family, I was born into a family of loss from HCM. I never met my grandfather. I never knew what my grandfather was like at the holidays, but my dad did, and he was missing that his whole life. And then his sister died before I was born, so he missed his sister, and that she died on the day before Christmas in a car accident. So the holidays have a lot of other stress around families that has nothing to do, or maybe has to do with the condition that runs in the family that took somebody. So you may not want to talk about it, but people might want to talk about it. So I think kind of setting some ground rules for, I'm really not comfortable talking about that person this year is really hard on me. So if you want to talk about her, I'll walk out here, or just let me know and you guys can have that conversation. I think setting expectations for people is really important, and you don't want to disrespect anybody, and you're not trying to be dramatic. You're just like, I can't right now. It's too hard on me, because it will hit you physically. You got a lot of food, you got a lot of stress, your heart rate's going to want to pick up for that. And our heart rates don't like to do that. So set ground rules and just set a boundary and say, I really don't want to do that this year. And let your family know.
I think that is, I think that's really insightful, because not about the ground rules, because not everybody communicates and copes and deals with that emotion the same way. Like some people are probably anxious just about the idea of being around family who want to talk about it. And they're like, I don't want to talk about it. So I do think that setting some boundaries is smart.
At the start of our holiday meals, and this is something my husband and I kind of started a few years ago. It wasn't something I grew up with. But at the beginning of the dinner, we acknowledge those who aren't there and we acknowledge those who are. And I always tear up because I know it's going to come, but it allows you to share a little bit of an emotion, and everybody has their own moment. Nobody has to say anything. It's like, we're grateful for those who are here and we're missing those who aren't. And the first holiday after my mom passed or my dad passed or my mother-in-law passed, like, we're missing that empty seat. And it's okay to acknowledge it, but you don't have to live in it. You don't have to live in it. Oh my goodness, there's notes here and I have no glasses on. So that's the bad side of talking to family. But then there's this other opportunity that could potentially arise for some of you. And that's the opportunity to talk to your family about what's happened in the past year. And that may be a new diagnosis. And it may be awkward to go, oh, by the way, I have a genetic heart muscle disorder, and genetic means it runs in the family and you're in my family. What does this mean for you? Any tips on how people might want to talk a little bit about that, Alex?
Yeah. It's funny. I actually often use family reunions or holidays as a specific time for families to reach out and discuss things. Again, you have to be tactful about it because you don't want to, in the middle of dinner, bring something up and then everyone get really spooked. We give our patients these letters. Our genetic counselors write up letters that detail the family's history, has a pedigree in it that shows everyone that's affected. It talks about what the genetic cause for the HCM that's been discovered in the family is and how that could impact their first degree relatives. And so we do that because sometimes we know it's hard for the patients to go into that kind of detail with family members, and they may not be able to answer all these questions and stuff. And so a lot of times what I've heard patients do is they'll say, hey, I was diagnosed with this heart condition, and they told me that it could affect my family members and I needed to let them know. And they gave me this letter with information about it. Are you interested in reading about it? Because it could have an impact on you. And so I find that that's helpful so that, there's already a lot of pressure on you to feel like you have to tell your family members about it. So for us to be able to take some of that off of them so that they don't have to go into the whole thing and you can just give them this information, I found that was helpful for our patients. I would think that most centers with genetic counselors have a similar kind of write-up.
We have one too.
Yeah.
So it's in our journal. So if you're a member, you'll get a copy of the journal, and there's pages that you can take pictures of and text them to your family members, or you can just bring your journal with you and then talk about it. I was kind of hoping to get a little family kit together for the holidays, but I didn't quite get it organized in time. So we should have it for next year with a coloring book for the kids on the All Hearts Collaborative and a little information about what HCM is and try to make it a little fun, and they get a little tchotchke to go home with, that kind of a thing. So hopefully we'll have that for next holiday season. But we got a little busy this year, so it didn't happen. Ross, could you put Dominic's comment back up there? He loves Thanksgiving dinner, and part of giving thanks is giving thanks for being there with everybody, which I think is a really insightful thought. Sometimes we just think about turkey and football and shopping the next day. So take the moment for gratitude and being thankful. Love the idea about using the time together to talk about HCM, genetic counseling, and some of the issues connected to his atrial fibrillation. Because if he's like my dad and my sister and a lot of people in my family, alcohol was a trigger for AFib, so they didn't do it. Or large meals were a trigger for AFib, but they did it anyway. So it's kind of one of those educational moments, like this leads to this because of that.
Yeah.
And if you break it down to this, that, you kind of tie it all together for them.
Yeah. And, I think also it kind of gets back to the fact that we're not walking around with tattoos on our forehead that say I have HCM, right? So it's not like a disease. is not a disease that people can see from the outside. And so there can be expectations like, oh, why don't you just have a glass of wine? It's Thanksgiving, And so it is an opportunity to educate on a lot of things, and why for you it's not great, because people can't tell how we're feeling on our insides based off how we look on our outsides a lot of times.
So I'm up here in Portland, Maine, and we just did a meet and greet ahead of our site visit. And we had 50 people sign up for our meet and greet, and 40 showed up. So that's always good. It's a very large meet and greet, which is typically just, hi, we're in town. We'll let you know we're here. But this turned into more of an education session, which was really nice. And as these people were coming in, we didn't bring our flags that say I have HCM or whatever. So we have name tags, and I'm like, just draw a heart if you have HCM. And it was really interesting for me to look at them, because almost all of them came in as couples. And I'm like, I don't know if it's you or you or you or you. And for me, even, I'm like, you cannot see it on the outside. Even though I've spent all my time with these people, it's impossible. And somebody said, why do we do that? And I'm like, because we don't have tattoos on our forehead so we can find our big-hearted friends. And they laughed, and they put hearts, and some of them put hearts around their whole name, and some put a heart in the corner. And it was interesting to see how they all did that. And they had some really great conversations. And finding somebody who shares your lived experience, whether you be the patient or the spouse, there was just some great conversation going on. I love patient meetings. We were in Pittsburgh the weekend before, and it was the same thing there. And then we had our annual meeting in October. I just love bringing the big-hearted together and having these deeper conversations. And maybe someday we'll make a tattoo that we can all put on our forehead.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, we do have a non-holiday related question here. And we're going to do this in a very podcast way of answering a question. Good morning. You've been taking diltiazem since May. You still have shortness of breath. You've been a little dehydrated, and you're waiting to hear from your cardiologist. I would encourage you to make sure that you are tied in with an HCMA recognized center of excellence. If you don't know what that is, you can go to 4hcm.org and look up the directory listing. If you have any financial issues that make it impossible for you to get there, we do offer travel stipends through the Lori Fund so that we can potentially help you get to that center and get on the proper medication. While many years ago, diltiazem would have been a very common drug that we would use first line and see how it works. There's better things out there today, more specific drugs that might address your shortness of breath better, but do stay hydrated. That will help you exponentially. So please get in touch with somebody who understands HCM at the deepest level, and they'll help address your medical concerns and get you on medication that is more appropriate or maybe just better for you. Any other comments, Alex?
No, I mean, without knowing the specifics of how her heart looks, it would be challenging to be able to give specific guidelines. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like she's kind of on the early stages of treatment, like got the first shot at treating this. Hopefully this is the early stage and she hasn't, Tranisha, you haven't been on diltiazem for a long time and haven't been feeling well for a long time, and this is all you've gotten. But yeah, it's kind of like what Lisa said towards the beginning of the podcast. We just have so many options for treatment now that we can do a lot better than just one drug and you're not feeling well. And the answer isn't always just to keep going up on that dose. And many times it is not the right answer to continue up increasing the dose of one medicine. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And so, yeah, I agree, lots of great cardiologists in the community that can also serve as a bridge to more advanced care when they
She was just diagnosed in April, so she's starting her journey this year. So that seems to be a theme, because we have another person stating that this was a year to be thankful for. So her 31-year-old had a cardiac arrest in August, and he was in ICU, and it was a touch and go, and he is fully recovered.
God bless him. I'm sorry that happened to you.
I'm very sorry that happened to them. And we hope that we've got the proper treatment on board, that we've got a defibrillator there now, and that we can protect his heart or her heart. I'm sorry, I don't know what gender. And thank you for sharing that with us. Dominic, you're chatty today. Dominic's got a lot of things to say here. So let's go back and take a look. I don't want to miss anything. You're not great about connecting during the year, so the holiday gives you a chance to connect. We love that. A lot of people do that. I have been on more airplanes this year. I calculated it out the other day. I spent like 9 days on airplanes this year. 9 days out of the year on an airplane. I would have rather spent those 9 days with my family, and most of them were on weekends. So, you get through a year and you go, okay, what did I do this year that I really liked and I really didn't like? And how am I going to change that? A little less travel, a little more Zoom. And Dominic, you keep running a list on your paper calendar of symptoms that you're experiencing, some notes, and that list to the appointment. So how are you? And then I rattle off a list of my experiences since the last time. And that floats ideas by my docs and leverage the HCMA and other sources for great care. We have a problem as a community. So now I'm not speaking to Dr. Alex, I'm speaking to patient Alex. He can flip his hats like that. It's amazing. So patient Alex, how often do you just tell your doctor, or did you at points in your life, I'm fine, when you know damn well you were having symptoms, but you really just didn't feel like discussing it because, then they're going to want to do something.
Before my myectomy, when I was feeling pretty bad, I, for the most part, avoided telling them how I felt. They didn't honestly push that hard. And part of it was because my brother was always sicker than me. So it was kind of like, appropriately more focused on him during the visits than me, because we did our visits together. And, I learned that recently too, like the benefit of sometimes splitting up family members. As a provider, I tend to make it easier for them, especially if they're coming from long distances, see everyone together. I actually had a mom see me alone without her children, who are always with her. And she told me way more about how she felt than she would normally, because she didn't want to worry her family. And it kind of reminded me of like, I was like, yeah, I feel terrible going up a flight of stairs, but like he's getting shocked by his ICD. So like, what am I going to talk about here? And so, yeah, I mean, I think we all have our own reasons for not disclosing how significant our symptoms are, whether it's out of fear that they're going to tell you can or cannot do something anymore, or making your family worried. Like there's all kinds of reasons, but I would say they should be the doctor should be asking questions in a way that makes you feel comfortable and makes you able to elaborate on your symptoms. Like if you just say, I feel great, but then you don't tell them that you don't go upstairs anymore, that you don't go to the gym anymore, like that you don't do anything anymore because it makes you feel bad, but you feel great as long as you're doing nothing, then that doctor is going to write in his note or her note, patient feels great, no symptoms, see you next year. And,
So I got a little bit of a laugh in my talk in Pittsburgh as I was explaining that we have a habit when we go to the doctor. We get a good night's sleep the night before. We ate a light meal. We're perfectly hydrated. We took our meds on perfect time. Like we are perfection. We study for the test. And I said, no. I want you guys to go out and have the best weekend. You know the kind of weekend I mean, and they all laughed. I'm like, one of those weekends, and go falling into the clinic on Monday morning and say, this is me. Because the worst you is the one they should see, not the best you. Because if they see you when you're your most challenged, then they can understand how the disease is really impacting you. And I say that a little tongue in cheek. I do not mean to go on a, blackout bender or something like that, but just eat the larger meal. Go the day after Thanksgiving and see what they say. Show them you on a normal day. Don't study for a test. I remember times where I would wear a Holter monitor and I would just be sedentary all day, thinking that's how I'd get my best results. And then I realized this isn't working for me. So then I would push myself to walk up hills. Okay, I did that once in my backyard. True story. Funny story. I put the Holter monitor on and I go walking up Viking Glen, which is the street next to my house. and you come up over the rise, and I am eye to eye with a baby bear. And it was a little baby bear.
You had your halter on?
I had the halter on.
Perfect.
And I'm like, oh my goodness. And then all of a sudden I hear rustling. I'm like,
Mama bear.
I hit the button on the monitor. And I'm like, this is what happens when you see a bear.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
man.
my heart rate went up by 40 beats a minute.
I can imagine.
Yeah. I was scared. Don't run into bears. Oh.
My goodness.
Okay, we have some other we got a chatty group today. I love this. So what is the question? Good morning. I live in South Florida. My family would love to travel to wintry areas of the country for the holiday season and see the snow. It snowed in New Jersey yesterday. What advice do you have for us HCM warriors in high altitude cities? So 2 different questions here. Alex, let's talk about cool weather and cold weather, because there's a difference. And let's talk about a little bit of mountains versus 9,000 feet.
Yeah. I mean, I would say in general, most patients feel better in cool weather. Like, then especially like my brother moved to Florida and I was like, what a mistake. It's so hot, so humid. Why would you do that? But that heat and humidity can really take a toll on folks' symptoms. And they'll tell me, I had a great day when I was really hydrated. I was inside the air conditioning all day. And then the next day I forgot to drink. I went outside, I was sweating all day. And so cooler areas tend to be better tolerated for a lot of my patients. Bone chilling cold, I don't know, it might be a wash because like when it's that cold, the effects on your body, I can't say plus minus for a patient with HCM, whether obstructed or not. I mean, it might be interesting to hear what the folks in Maine have to say with how they feel during the winters. I would say in Philadelphia, we have pretty temperate climate now because of global warming. So we don't get like, the terrible cold winters, but I haven't heard my patients complain too much about super, super cold weathers. In terms of the altitude, when you are at a higher altitude, the amount of oxygen, in scientific terms, would be a partial pressure of oxygen in the air is lower. And so people that have totally normal hearts, totally normal lungs can go up to the highest elevations in Colorado and feel short of breath.
Yeah.
Even when they did Olympic training and people that were Olympic level athletes, runners, went to high levels, they had decrease in their exercise capacity because it takes your body time to acclimate. So much to the point that there are patients that live at high altitude that their blood hemoglobin levels go up to hold more oxygen to compensate for the fact that the pressures of oxygen are lower at higher altitudes. And so what I would say is acutely, you actually may feel worse when you get to, I don't know, if you're going to the top of a mountain. And so you will probably need to pace yourself more so than if you were in normal elevation. So that's a good question about high altitude cities. So I would definitely pace yourself, stay hydrated. I wouldn't necessarily immediately be alarmed that something has changed about your heart. If you notice a little bit more shortness of breath at higher altitudes, it's probably a fact of the change in the altitude.
I would make a recommendation for somebody in the South who wants to experience mountains, but not really high ones. The Pocono Mountains in Pennsylvania. You get a mountain look. They're not a real high altitude. I don't think it goes over like 1,200 feet. It's not high altitude, but you get the mountain feel. So if you want to see some snow and you want some pine trees and you want a mountain, you want some waterfalls, the Poconos. Yeah. All I can think of is the old Mount Airy Lodge commercials, but they're not there anymore. There's a casino there. You can have some fun. So there's oxygen in the casinos too.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, they pump them with oxygen.
Yeah, I think I did the White Mountains in New Hampshire once when I was a resident. That was harder.
That's higher. I don't know what the elevation is there, but it's definitely higher than the Poconos. We have a question from Sarah. So she has a loop monitor, and she's been very symptomatic. She transmits to EP, and they say everything is normal, but she's not feeling right. What might Sarah be feeling that's showing up on her loop monitor that's maybe making her feel not great, but
Yeah.
EP is not concerned? What might that be?
So loop monitors, if you have, some of the common ones are link monitors. So they're small little implantable devices that go under the skin. And they're good because if you're a person that has HCM and has symptoms, but maybe not every day, that you might not catch on a 24-hour or 48-hour monitor or even a 2-week monitor, then a loop monitor is a long-term monitor that can stay in for years that you can transmit to your provider to tell them you're having symptoms, and then they can look at it. So they're helpful for long-term monitoring. The downsides of loop monitors is that they're not as sensitive. And so the out-of-box settings for loop monitors from the company have a very high threshold usually for what they will detect and what they will report to the doctor. And so let's say, Sarah, that you're having brief runs of fast rhythms that fall below the range at which the loop monitor detects. Or you're having frequent skipped beats, like what we call PVCs or PACs. Some of those things may not necessarily be picked up on that monitor if they're not within the parameters that they set, because they set it to the point where they pick up life-threatening stuff because the doctors don't want to get bombarded with every single thing that comes, because then they get alarm fatigue and it's just so much data. So they intentionally set some of the parameters high. So what I would say is that in some instances, you actually might miss something like frequent PVCs or frequent PACs, individual skip beats, or even short little runs of abnormal rhythms that fall under the threshold that may be causing you to have symptoms. And so for my patients that have that issue, sometimes I've actually asked the electrophysiologists to either lower the detection on the link so we can see more, or I'll just send them a Zeo patch or a type of monitor that looks a little bit more in depth for like a week or two. And if the Zeo doesn't really, every time you hit the button on the Zeo or on the 2-week monitor and it correlates with a normal rhythm, then it makes me wonder if your symptoms aren't due to abnormal heart rhythms, but maybe due to something structurally that's happening with the flow through blood through your heart. Like I've had patients that wear the 2-week monitor and they say, I'm having really bad symptoms. And then I look and they say, I had really bad symptoms. I look at the rhythm is normal. And then they say, I was walking up a flight of stairs when I had the symptoms. Like, okay, maybe the reason you're having those symptoms, it might feel like palpitations, but it's actually obstruction that's causing you to feel that way. So there are ways to really tease out where your symptoms are coming from. And, my hope is that you don't get dismissed. I'm not in the business of speaking poorly about other cardiologists, but I have had to transfer some of my patients link monitor care to other electrophysiologists at times when I just feel like I've had a hard time kind of connecting the symptoms with what's being detected on the monitors.
So what might drive somebody to go from not being very symptomatic, not feeling a lot of palpitations, to feeling them? Are there hydration, stress, exercise? Like, is there, from your experience, clinically and personally, are there things that can help trigger or subside some of these episodes?
Yeah. I mean, I think dehydration is one of the biggest culprits, especially for patients with obstruction. Obviously, if you've missed your metoprolol or your verapamil or whatever it is you usually take, if you've missed a dose or two, a lot of people will feel that within 24 to 48 hours if they've missed a dose. Lack of sleep, I've noticed patients describe, and I think anecdotally for myself, lack of sleep can trigger more abnormal rhythms like PVCs, PACs, things like that. And then stress for sure. And I think it's helpful if you're having symptoms and they see PVCs that is something that needs to be addressed, because skip beats from the bottom chambers of the heart, which is what we call PVCs, can be benign, but even if they're not causing your heart to have a problem per se, they can be very symptomatic. Like you can feel like you cannot. One time I was having frequent PVCs to the point where I felt like I might not be able to get through work today. Like just every 3-4 beats, like boom, it almost feels like your heart skips a beat and like your chest just feels empty for a second. And then the next beat is like a thud.
Yeah.
Like to make up for the last one. And it's very uncomfortable. And if you just feel that over and over and over again all day, it can be really hard to get through. And so a lot of that is treatable. So I guess if you notice you're having skip beats and every time you have symptoms, it correlates with a skip beat. Some people, whether you have a monitor on, sometimes if you have a watch, sometimes the watches can detect that. If you just put your finger on your Apple Watch, if you have that, or if you have a Cardia device where you put your fingers on the Cardia when you're having symptoms, look to see, you kind of get used to the point where you see what an EKG looks like of your heart, like the little squiggly lines all look the same. And then all of a sudden you see one that looks way different than the other ones. That might give you a sense of what's happening.
So PVCs can be annoying. They can be scary. They can feel just bad, but they're typically not dangerous. And that is a really hard thing to emotionally process as you're feeling something. And I just want to encourage everybody, if you are feeling this, step one, stop and take a few breaths. Just stop. Just give yourself a few moments to get back in sync with your body and your heart. The only thing that I am licensed to prescribe, water, water, water. Just drink some water. Get yourself to calm down a little bit because this can start a very nasty cycle. If you get nervous and you start to build up some adrenaline, that adrenaline is going to go right back down into your heart. It's going to make your heart go faster again. And then it's going to make you feel worse because now you're having PVCs on an elevated heart rate. So I call it the cat chasing its tail. So if you're feeling all of those things, when you're feeling some PVCs and you're getting more anxious, stop, breathe, close your eyes for a second if you can. Walk away from what you're doing, clear your mind if that's what's kind of brought you there, and just give yourself 2 to 3 minutes of time. It sounds little, but it's a lot. 2 to 3 minutes really bring you back down and let you remind yourself, I got a wonky heart. It does wonky things. I'm safe. I'm okay.
Yeah. And, you know, it's also worth a conversation. You feel like this is happening to you a lot, talking to your cardiologist about, you know, am I on the best medicine to treat these skip beats? Some people respond really, really well to beta blockers like metoprolol. Some people are much more responsive to calcium channel blockers like verapamil. I happen to be someone that verapamil just does it for me. Beta blockers most of the time don't, and other patients aren't like that. So have a conversation with your doctor about, like, could there be another option? It's for the same reasons why even my patients that have done great on newer drugs like mavacamten doesn't do much to treat abnormal heart rhythms. And so I still keep them on some of that, what we call background therapy, the original stuff they were on, and I don't totally take them off of it if they're having a lot of skip beats, a lot of symptoms from palpitations, because those medicines can help for those things. And sometimes if we notice that, you know, their heart rates are definitely in a safe range, sometimes we say it's okay to take an extra half a dose or whatever when you're having a lot of PVCs or skip beats. But it's definitely something you want to talk to your doctor about, like to have a contingency plan. Like, what do I do on a Saturday when I wake up and I'm feeling a lot of skip beats?
Can I take an extra beta blocker? Can I take an extra half? Should I take some verapamil? Should I drink some water? Should I rest? Should I exercise? I think we default to rest very easily, but sometimes just a nice slow walk, just kind of getting your body into a rhythm, I have found help break some of those PVC cycles for me back in my old heart days.
Totally. Actually, you know, when your intrinsic heart rhythm increases, sometimes it can outcompete those PVCs. So what you were doing, Lisa, kind of like when people have obstruction, squatting down, if they've been exercising, people reflexively will like kneel down or squat down. That helps relieve obstruction via some complicated mechanisms of how blood flows around the body. Similar thing with PVCs. If your resting heart rate is 60, but the PVCs keep like out competing your resting heart rate, if you increase your heart rate to 90 because you're walking, then that rate might be fast enough to overcome the PVCs, and you might beat them out. Sorry, PVCs is premature ventricular contraction. So it's a skip beat from the bottom part of the heart. They tend to be very common in HCM because the heart is thick, and a lot of times that tissue the architecture of the tissue is not normal, and so it puts you at risk for skip beats. And sometimes people have scar in their heart, and scar can lead you to have skip beats. So that's what a premature ventricular contraction, or a PVC, is.
You have another question. Sorry about some of the echoing here, people. I don't know why that. Oh, I thought it was popping up. What about extra beats?
Yeah. So that is a general term that it would encompass skip beats or extra beats from the top chambers of the heart. So those are premature atrial contractions because they're coming from the atria, the top chambers, and premature ventricular contractions, or PVCs, that come from the ventricles or the bottom chambers. And patients can have both of them. Just because you have those beats doesn't mean you have HCM, but having HCM probably puts you at higher risk for having those skip beats. And some people, God bless them, they can have a bunch of them and don't feel any of them. But some HCM patients can have very few but feel every single one. And so you kind of have to tailor it to the patient and their symptoms and what the monitors show. And that would determine, like if you're having a lot of PACs, skip beats from the top chambers, or a lot of PVCs from the bottom chambers, and you're feeling those and feeling like that. I don't know if you were on earlier when we were talking about that thud kind of emptiness followed by like a bam in the middle of your chest. That's what PVCs, the way I describe it, is an uncomfortable awareness of your own heart. Like most people have no idea they have a heart. Like they're just walking around living their life.
Do they live in Washington, D.C.? Sorry.
Yeah, well. And so that uncomfortable awareness that you feel those skip beat sensations can be treatable with different medicines. And so I would say that if you are having extra beats on your monitor, they quantify those in percentages, and they'll usually say whether they're occasional, like 1 to 4% of all your beats are skip beats, or are they rare, less than 1%. If they're frequent, like 5 to 10 or greater percent of all of your beats are skip beats, then that can definitely cause symptoms, and there are different ways to treat them.
Absolutely. We're going to take one more question, and then we'll wrap this up for the day. And that is from Marilyn. What do you have to say? This is an interesting question. I have HOCM, so obstructive HCM, and wonder if patients have a COE provider for all their cardiac issues or just for HOCM. I live in the Adirondack Mountains. They're beautiful too, but they're a little higher. So no disrespect to the Adirondacks when I'm talking about vacation spots, but the Poconos are lower. And the cold is very difficult. So she wears a scarf over her face. So let's just talk about Center of Excellence care for your HCM heart. What should the expectation be of a patient for their cardiac care at a center?
I think you will find different approaches depending on the doctor you see. If I didn't become a cardiologist, I was going to be a primary care doctor. And so I tend to be a little bit more, we talk about diabetes, we talk about weight, we talk about, your coronary disease, we talk about all the other things, because it's important to remember that just because you have HCM doesn't mean you're immune to every single other thing that Americans or anybody are at risk for.
I want everybody to get lipoprotein A screenings.
Yeah. And so, I think in my clinic and Dr. Owens is the same. We'll check your thyroid. We'll, start you on a GLP-1. We look at it a little bit more holistically. I have seen that some cardiologists that specialize in HCM are very, very much focused on just the HCM, and they say, for all the other stuff, you can see your other cardiologist. And that there's probably some good reasons for that. And sometimes I do that if you have a local cardiologist that's been managing, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, all that stuff, because you don't, first of all, as the subspecialist cardiologist, we want to make sure that we're working together well with your primary doctor. And two, it can get really confusing if you come to see me once a year and I'm changing your background, like your cholesterol medicine, your blood pressure medicine. You go then see that other doctor and they change it again. And it can be confusing for the providers, even though I try and call or send a message to the providers when I see their patients. And so all that to be said, I think you can expect to get care of more than just pure HCM. And I saw you wrote HOCM or obstructive, but like same for non-obstructive HCMs too.
And apical and mid cavities, all of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and it's confusing. I have cardiologists ask me this question all the time. What is obstructive HCM? And if you think about it from at least how I think about it and how we've structured clinical trials to think about it, when we're talking about obstruction, we're thinking about the area where the blood is coming right out of the heart, something called the outflow tract. There can be obstruction of blood flow at the tip of the heart or the apex, especially for our patients with apical HCM. There can be obstruction in the middle of the heart, in the middle cavity of the left ventricle. We call that mid-cavitary obstruction. And that's where it gets confusing because we're still saying obstruction. But when we talk about obstruction at the tip of the heart, in the middle of the heart, that group of patients is not who we're talking about when we say HOCM. When we say HOCM, we're talking about obstruction of blood in the outflow tract. And that's what the newer medicines are targeted to treat that. But super confusing.
I laugh about a few years ago, one of our posters, and the original poster that we had that was in doctors' offices all over the country, showed a non-obstructed, an obstructed, and a normal heart, and then an explanation of HCM. So people kept telling me, I have the rare kind. And I'm like, why are you calling apical and mid-cavity rare? And different people over a couple of weeks said, well, it's not on the poster. So I made a new poster. Mm-hmm. So you're not rare. It's a common thing. But we're still, over the past 15 years, we were still learning all the different anatomies. And now we understand that there's such a variety of anatomies, and understanding your individual anatomy will open the door for you to understand what treatment options might be available for you now and in the future. So that is what the HCMA intake and navigation call process helps you do. It's a little bit different than your appointment with your clinicians. It helps prepare you for that appointment with your clinician. So you're on target with what you need for your heart, so you can ask better, more informed questions and make better, more informed choices about how you want to interact with the healthcare system and the options that are available to you. So knowing your anatomy is critically important. And I just went down a rabbit hole because I felt like it. Sorry, Alex.
That's okay. Important.
It is. And it's a really, okay. So I'm going to have a little moment with you all today. I'm going to have like a reality check moment. So it's come to my attention that February will commence 30 years the HCMA has been a 501c3 organization. I don't feel like I'm 30 years old, even though I have a 30-year-old daughter and a 30-year-old organization. But I have been doing a bit of reflection lately at some of the work that we've been able to accomplish here at the HCMA and where it's going. We have developed a system that is very unique. No other disease state has an advocacy organization that does things the way we do it. I'm not saying we're right and we're wrong, or we're better or they're worse. It's just evolved differently here because of the unique nature of HCM. and that we are incredibly personal with people. We are talking to families like yours, Alex, all those years ago when your mom called me. And all right, maybe I didn't put two and two together for a while to figure out that you were that kid, because you're still that kid in my mind. And now you're Dr. Alex. So things progress. And original concept, I wanted guidelines so everybody knew how to treat HCM and they didn't have to rely on world-renowned experts. But I couldn't get guidelines unless I had clinical trials. And then I started to build centers so that we could do clinical trials in those centers so that we could get guidelines. But then I found a back door to get the guidelines anyway. So we got the guidelines in 2011. And then industry showed up and started to develop treatments for us. While it seems a little thrown together, it was very opportunistic on where we could find an opportunity to engage so that we could grow. And here we are today, almost 30 years later, a community that has come together to educate and to elevate, to support, to advocate, and we've built an amazing ecosystem. We have really great friends in industry and in the legislature, at the state and federal levels. If you told me 30 years ago that this is what was going to happen, I would tell you you were insane and there's no way I could do that. But thanks to a great team at the HCMA, all of our staff and contractors and our board, and all of our Center of Excellence partners, Alex, you and all of your colleagues at UPenn and everybody that we work with throughout the world, they're really showing up to help improve patients' lives. And I'm having a proud mama moment. I don't let myself do that often, but wow, we've come a long way. And we've helped a lot of people along the way. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot along the way too. My goal is to lose less, save more, keep families whole as long as possible, and really keep elevating the science. So as I'm having my going into the holiday season emotional moment, thank you all for being part of this crazy journey. It's just been amazing. And
thank you for doing it.
Thanks for being part of the team that floats the boats and makes them all rise. It's been pretty amazing. So I am going to wrap it up here in Portland. Stacy and I are going to hang down to the waterfront and have ourselves a nice little New England lunch before we jump on a plane and head back to New Jersey. We have some interesting podcasting coming up in the next couple of days. Wait, I want to show you all something. Where is it? It's in the bag. I'm going to be doing another podcast with another amazing young lady whom I've known since she is the ripe old age of, I think, 8 or 9. Oh, come on, where's my book? Here it is. I literally opened everything. This is the book, and it's called Ella's New Beat, and it's by Ella Morrissey. And this is an amazing, it's a great stocking stuffer. It just goes to her. It's not a fundraiser. So this young lady had a very, very, very unruly heart. And this is the story of her diagnosis, her early childhood and teen years with a diagnosis of HCM, and some of the very normal interactions that caused her to have life-threatening arrhythmias. And the last incident that led her to go get a heart transplant is funny, sad, and very relatable. And I'm not going to blow it for you, but it involves a squirrel. So when I say it's funny, I know we're talking about cardiac arrest here, but there is this moment of just absurdity of it's an absurd story, but it's real. So we're going to be we're setting this up very quickly because I really want to do this before the holidays for you to meet her and her mom. My name's in the book. I'm feeling very proud. My name's in the book. So I want to share this with you all. We'll probably come up with some way to distribute it through HCMA. I haven't talked to her about that yet, but just an amazing young lady, an amazing book. I have 2 young ladies who are amazing in my world this month. So shout out to both of them. And then who else is give me a note here. Okay, you're very welcome, Marilyn. All right, Alex, I wish you and your family, as it has grown since last Thanksgiving, a wonderful holiday season. And for those of you who will be thinking about an empty seat at the table this year, you're not alone. And acknowledge them and enjoy your day, because that's exactly what they would want for you. Happy Thanksgiving, Alex.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. Come visit me.
I will. I will. You never know. All right, guys. We're going to take it off from here. Thank you so much for joining us on Tales from the Heart, and stay tuned for updated information out of Maine over the next couple of months.